the fact that a lot of things on Google are asking, is the Tinder Swindler real, kind of indicates how absolutely insane this story is. As a documentary, I thought it was pretty incredible. It actually started off really slow, and there's some really questionable editing in the beginning, trying to make it look fanciful. But once you get into it and you actually learn what this is about, it's so engaging you will not want to stop watching it. And just to answer the question, is it real? As far as I can tell, it is 100% truthful. This is a Netflix documentary about several women who were, well, if you like, swindled out of hundreds of thousands of dollars and pounds out of an individual who signed up on Tinder, pretended to have this lavish lifestyle and be rich and wealthy, and then he would lure them in, gain their trust, and then scam them. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail about the intricacies of this case because I want you to definitely watch this. I thoroughly recommend this documentary if you like true crime. But I will touch upon a few things that maybe stood out for me. There are also a lot of discussions that can be had about how did these women, why would they give away so much money? Why would they take out credit cards in their name just to hand it over to this man they've known for a month? On the one hand, I'm very much team I would never do that if I was in that situation, but at the same time I probably wouldn't because I'm very tight with money. If you ask me to lend you £10, I'm going to quiz you for what it's for before I do it. But at the same time, if you look at criminal profiling and the kind of individual that this man is, they can be very manipulative. So feel free to discuss in the comments what you think maybe led these women to give away such large amounts of money. But at the same time, I think it's one of those things where you can just be manipulated without even knowing it. The documentary itself is just shy of 2 hours, and they could have done this as a series, but I'm kind of glad they did it as a one-part extended documentary, because you kind of do just have to sit down and watch it all in one go and fully absorb it to feel the shock of this. It's directed by Felicity Morris, and for the most part, I think it's quite well directed. I think the pacing of it works quite well. We begin by being introduced to one of the women. I believe it was Cecile first, who finds Simon Leviev on Tinder, and she meets him in the hotel of the Four Seasons, I believe it was, in the hotel lobby of the Four Seasons, and then he takes her. Pretty much that day, I think that hour, he offers her a ride in his private jet because he's got a business meeting, and she just kind of goes along with it. So I think definitely free spirits and people who are willing to take that kind of risk and adventure are more likely to be affected by Leviev, and certainly he's taking advantage of that. And, he flies back and forth to meet her. They begin to develop quite a strong bond over text or on WhatsApp, and there's no reason why he would be lying. And this documentary kind of explains that. We get to see messages and voicemails that he sends to Cecile, or Cecily. I may be mispronouncing her name. I apologize if I am. And he does seem genuine. We see photographs. The fact that she was actually on his private jet on day one. You would trust somebody. If somebody said, I have a private jet, you might not believe them. But if they say, would you like to have a ride in my private jet, and then you're on the jet, it's kind of hard to not believe things they're saying, because they've proven this. And what Leviev has actually done, and what the documentary explains very well and very clearly, I found it very easy to follow, despite the fact that it sounds confusing what I'm about to say. Basically, he borrows, I use borrows in air quotes, he takes money from one woman, uses that money to give another woman some fancy experience, so she believes that he is rich and wealthy, and then he takes money from that next woman to do it to somebody else. And he's basically living this high quality lifestyle with all of the riches by taking money from women and splashing the cash, and then showering other women to lure them in. And it's actually a really clever way of frauding somebody, if you think about it, because in a way, well, first of all, as the documentary makes clear, it means his name is not on any information. Money he is receiving is from credit cards and savings of other women. And if he's buying things for other women, he'll do it from that credit card. So his name is never really tied down to anything, which in itself is very clever. The other reason it's clever is that it's technically infinite. You borrow from one woman to lure another woman in, and then you borrow from that woman to lure in another, and so on and so forth. So he is obviously a very clever individual who knows, or knew. I'm also not going to tell you what happens to him, because it's shocking. When you find out at the very end, it obviously says, you know, what happens. I was a little bit annoyed at the outcome of that, as I'm sure other people were as well. But the main thing is now, if you Google his name, this all comes up. And then we meet Pernilla, and we find out about how various victims of his were able to learn about one another. And we get to see clips of some of the victims confronting him via WhatsApp, and there's a lot of audio clip of his voice, and you can hear the anger in his voice as he begins to realize that they may be onto him, and there is panic in his voice. And if you contrast the clips of him saying he loves them and he's looking forward to seeing them again, and then you compare that with the audio clips of him getting angry and aggressive, it's such a strong personality shift, and I would be quite terrified in that situation. What's also interesting about this is that he tells different lies to different women. Again, reducing the risk of anybody finding out that he is the same person as somebody else. And I think this documentary does a very good... It gives the victims a voice. That is absolutely the case. This is told from the perspective of the victims. And I think that that's brilliant because it's their story. It's their time to say what happened and to get the word out as well about this individual, and also to warn other people about catfishing or fraudulent behaviour. What I found particularly interesting as well was the responses of certain, some of the police. I think the British police and the Norwegian police were both mentioned, and their actions I thought were pretty great and spot on and exactly what I would have expected from them. So that was really encouraging. And it definitely is the victim story, but we do get to learn a lot about Leviev. As I said, there are a lot of audio clips, video clips, from a forensic psychologist perspective, of which one I am not. But if I were to kind of forensically analyse this, as I like to try and do from a psychological perspective in my amateur ways, it's a very interesting character study. And I think this kind of manipulative personality is so fascinating, because one of the main takeaways from this documentary, I personally felt this, and I did some Googling afterwards, and pretty much everybody else does as well, is why would you give that much money to somebody you've barely known for a month? And there is the fact that obviously they believed that Leviev had this money to give back, to pay back. He used the whole, like, oh, my credit cards are holed up, or I can't be traced, which I think is a pretty standard way of getting money. He was basically one step away from claiming to be a Nigerian prince, put it that way. But because he's able to prove he has this wealth, whether or not he earns it honestly is a different question, but because he can prove he has this money, it's very easy for people to believe that he will pay the money back and that he does have the means for those funds. But at the same time, taking out a credit card and taking out loans just to give to somebody you've known for a month or two. There was actually one individual here who'd known him for much longer, and I wish they'd focus a bit more on her experience with him, particularly the length of time she'd spent with him and whether or not she had any idea about these other women. I think that bit was glossed over, if I were to just criticise one point of this documentary. But yes, to take out loans just to give to him is a bit excessive, and I think everybody watching this would go, I would not do that in a million years, and neither would I. But as the victims point out, when you're in that situation, and when you genuinely believe you love this person, you believe they love you, and you believe they have the ability to pay that money back, and you believe the lies that they're telling you, because you have no reason not to, it's a very different situation, and I think that each of us would react in ways that we wouldn't expect. So we can all take the high ground and say we wouldn't give that money out to him. And as I said, me being quite tight-fisted with money, it would take a lot for me to, you know, lend somebody any kind of money, to be perfectly honest, because I don't trust people. But it is really shocking and moving. As I said, the documentary is well edited, the stories are well told, we get introduced to new characters, if you like, at a really good pace, and we find more and more about his lies as it goes on. It doesn't just start off with Simon Leviev told this lie, this lie, and this lie, and this is what happened. It lures us in the way he would have lured in the victims. And I absolutely adored it. It was gripping from start to finish. If you like true crime, you will love this. Obviously, it's not as bloodthirsty as a lot of true crime documentaries, but from a psychological perspective, it will burrow into your brain and make you question everybody, because everybody could be lying on the internet. We know a lot of people do, but when you take it to the next level like Leviev and not only say I have money, but actually show evidence of that, it's pretty difficult to not believe him. Why would you not believe him? He's got evidence. And the other characters in his little web of lies. It's a whole mess, and it will blow your mind. I truly enjoyed this one. I'm obviously really sorry that the victims all had to go through this in order for us to get this documentary, but it's entertaining for the right reasons. It's eye-opening, it's powerful, it's a little emotive, and I think, if anything, it will make you think twice about, first of all, giving money to somebody, and second of all, believing everything that you see, because not everything is as it seems.